Hey there, Revere0311 here. So, Christmas Eve, I hit 1,000 subscribers, so I'm going to call this my 1,000 subscriber special. This video is going to be going over the books that I used in researching on how to purchase one of these, an authentic Revolutionary War firelock. The reason I'm making this video is because I've always wanted to own a Revolutionary War firelock. I came over from the Milsurp, World War I, World War II. Those are very common at gun shows. I have had enough of those. And I'm like, I want to buy a Revolutionary War era flintlock. I'm an American. Having one of the first guns that would have been used in the country by the military would be awesome. I'm a former Marine infantryman, so it's just that history connection is something I wanted to do. What I learned is that when I first went online, the information that's provided online is pretty bad on when it comes to collecting information. There's a lot, and I don't know if it's necessarily it's no one's fault online, but if you just dip your toe into historic firearms, especially the French infantry muskets, or more commonly known as the Charlevilles, you're going to be very confused because they all look completely different. Because in general, they call a French Charleville. But there's a 1763, a 66, there's the collector's term of a 68, there's a 74, there's a 77, there's a 70, there's a 71. And that's all having to do with how the lock looks, or the position of a barrel band, or does it have a barrel band, or the bayonet lug, is it on the top, or is it on the bottom, or is it the comb of the stock? So yeah, if you want to get into collecting these historic, authentic firearms, it does require a good amount of work. For one, because these things are not cheap. This one in front of me is about $5,500. I won this off an auction. So before you go in and put that investment in, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting the right thing. I've actually made a video where I randomly purchased what I thought was a French Model 9 infantry musket a couple months ago, and it turned out not to be. So like, I've also made mistakes. I'm not coming here to tell you I know everything about collecting. I'm just making this video as a way for me to help you if you want to get into collecting historic firearms, or if you've been doing it longer than me, which probably you have, if you have any tips or recommendations. So first off, I'm going to go through the books that I have found most useful in collecting historic firearms. So the reason you buy these books is because they provide way more information and they help you understand the firearms and that you will be collecting. If you try to do this online, it's going to take you a lot of time. I just recommend getting the books. You're going to have to spend a decent amount of money. Maybe not as much as me, because hopefully you just see the book that you want out of this whole little book review. You choose the book that's most going to help you build your collection or help you out. The first book we're going to be looking at is French Military Weapons by Major James Hicks. This book is kind of referred to as the Bible, I've seen on some online forums. So it covers French military weapons from 1717 to 1938. It has a lot of information, and it has a lot of like cursory information. So as we look through it, it not only includes French infantry muskets of the 18th and 19th century, but it goes all the way to like flare guns and artillery pieces of World War I. So this was probably this book came out in the 30s. This one here was published in 1960. I bought it off Amazon for about $60 to $70. So the good things about the books, which I'm going to be putting forward right here, has these pictures of all the different infantry muskets next to each other. And I showed this to my brother over Christmas, and he's like, they all look the same. And they kind of do, but you can notice the location of the barrel retention band, how the lock is, the reinforced cock, the length, the bayonet lug. So you can this is kind of useful to quickly identify French infantry muskets. Overall, is this a required book? I would say no. If you're trying to do French infantry muskets, I would say this is not a required book. But it is good to have if you can get it for cheap. I'll probably end up giving this actually to a friend that enjoys World War I. Second, I'm going to do the French Military Small Arms by Bianchi. This book is very useful. It's nice because it comes with full color photos. You can see the different models. They have close-ins. They'll show you things like the inside of the lock. They'll compare two locks next to each other. They have lots of good history information. It's a good book to kind of browse through. Visually, this is probably one of the better books that you have. And it also goes into Monsieur du Montbéliard, who is instrumental in French small arms production. So this will cover everything from the starting the National Armory, so like the 1717s, all the way through the end of the Flintlock eras for the French. These are also pretty easy to pick up online. If you want to collect American Revolutionary War era muskets, I don't really use this one that much for that. It does have a general overview, but it doesn't really give you the information for the particulars between the models. Now this, if you're going to collect French infantry muskets of the American Revolutionary War, I have found this to be one of the best on specifically French infantry small arms. It's French Military Arms and Armor in America by René Chartrand. And the information that it has in here is very good. Goes over edged weapons, swords. So even if you're looking to expand on just muskets, you have swords, pikes, all the other different weapons that would have been used in the American Revolution. So I would recommend this book. It's not too expensive either. It's got this great photo comparing a 63 to a 66, and you can actually tell the differences. And it's just been a good book overall. I use this one quite a bit. Also, it's got the good story about the shell company. So moving on, we have Muskets of the Revolution. These will be more common. You'll see these actually referenced in like Rock Island auctions. Like this gun is mentioned in this book by like George Moller or Bill Ahearn. Muskets of the Revolution. If I was going to recommend one book in which you really want to get a good understanding of all the different flintlocks of the American Revolution, it would be this, Muskets of the Revolution by Bill Ahearn. Again, apologies if I say any of these names wrong. It goes over the different stock types. It has all the information. Actually, when I was reading this book recently, it helped me kind of put together on the lock, the side plate for my lock. I actually have initials ICC, and I also have a replacement cock. And from this book, I was able to kind of piece together that these initials, I'm pretty sure it came from an American arsenal rebuild, which would make sense because they replaced the reinforced cock on here, and the Americans would stamp. So I actually just found that out recently. I haven't been able to talk about that in the video yet. But yeah, so this book will cover, not only does it cover French military arms, it's going to cover British arms, Dutch arms, German arms, British arms. It's going to go over Committee of Public Safety muskets. It's going to go over militia muskets. It's going to have all the different variations and that within. So this is and also has a lot of good pictures. It's not in color. The pictures are black and white, but that doesn't really matter too much. It's always better to have color, but you got some decent photos. Some of them are a little blurry. You'd wish they'd be a little better, but hopefully they come out with this in color. Moving on now, so that's the American Revolution, weapons of the American Revolution, French muskets. So now we're kind of moving post that, which would be early American firearms. So that would be your 1795s, your 1808s, your 1816s. So you can do American Military Shoulder Arms by George D. Moller. You see this one a lot. These books are amazing. This is two. You want 1 and 2. And as you can see, these are quite thick, and these are easy to go through as well. These books I use quite a bit to go through and kind of get a general idea. I'll always be like, all right, this is a 1766 here. What do you got for here? Because you have to kind of piece together information from multiple different sources. But this has been a good book as well. You got parts 1, you got parts 2. Part 2 will take you all the way to the end of the 1816. So all the way up, model 1816. So all the way to the end of the American Flintlock era. Now, if you want to do American firearms that are produced in American arsenals, no book, in my opinion, beats Peter A. Schmidt's U.S. military flintlock muskets. No book beats this. These books are just immense, just so much knowledge. I picked this one up for $70, so $70 a pop. So they are expensive, but the amount of information contained in these books is just phenomenal. They even it's almost like you're going through the emails of a government employee and a contractor, and they're talking about like how expensive muskets are, and if they've gone over budget or under budget, or the quality. So they have those actual letters inside the book, which is just, I mean, it doesn't quite have to do with the guns themselves, but it has to do with the procurement and production of military small arms. It goes over how much they're paying your armorers and your locksmiths and your master armor, your superintendent, your clerk, your workman, the name of the person that was making it. It goes over the variety of different contracts for the early American flintlocks, the differences in the trigger guards and the combs of the stock. It's such a good book. These books by Peter A. Schmidt are amazing to have. If you want to collect, I would recommend these if you want to do 1816 or 1795 through 1816 flintlocks. These are the books to have. They are a little bit pricey, but the amount of information you get from them is just amazing. And you have a part 1 and you have a part 2. It goes through to the Civil War, includes all the percussion conversions, which I've actually used this to identify my 1816 that was converted to percussion. I was able to identify what the alteration was and where it was done. Mine was done in Philadelphia, if I remember correctly. And then you also have Springfield Infantry, Armory, Muskets, 1795 to 1844. This is a good book to have. The most important thing I pulled, this is nice because it's color. It's just like that French military arms book. It is color. It will put all the other ones next to each other, and you can see beautiful color photos of the different types of stocks. This has been quite helpful in 1816 identification and things like that. And also, one of the things I pulled from this is that it actually takes the inside of a lock plate with all the mechanisms, the spring, and you can look at it and you can figure out, like, is this an original lock? Did somebody rebuild this? Did somebody reconvert a percussion to a flintlock, which mine is? So this book has been pretty helpful in figuring all that out. Overall, a good book. And then, as you can tell, I've been very heavy on French arms, and then since American arms are based very heavily off the French patterns, that's kind of where my collection is at the moment. But there's also Brown Bess by Erik, Goldstein, and Stuart, Mowbray. I don't really have too much to say on this because I have barely dipped my toes into Brown Besses or short land pattern British infantry muskets. But it's an identification guide and illustrated study. It's got very pretty color photos, and it's got all the information that you could kind of just have a cursory understanding. So this is my sources I go through when collecting. The one thing I will say is that if I was going to purchase one book, it would be Muskets of the Revolution by Bill Ahearn. If I was going to do Revolutionary War guns. If I was going to purchase one book for French, I would do French Military Arms and Armor in America by René Chartrand. If I was going to purchase one book to go over American arms, you kind of have to do the Peter A. Schmidt, and that gives you both of the books, and that will cover everything you need. I wish I could say there was one holy grail of a book, but there's not. Every time an auction comes up, or I'm researching a gun, or I just recently went to a museum and was helping them out. Anytime that you are looking to do research into one specific gun, you're going to have multiple different sources. And I'm sure if you're going to be interested in collecting historic firearms, you already have that kind of interest into learning more about it. But you're going to have more than one, and you're going to have to dip your toes into more than one. So that's just an overview of how I go about doing my research. See if you actually care or not, but that's what I do. Another thing that I find very handy when I actually have a flintlock in my hands is I have this flashlight, because you can use this to hit different angles. Because if you look at some of your stock, like I purchased this 1816, I couldn't see any marks on it, but when I brought the light down and I hit it at an angle, I could see that, Oh, there's inspector's initials on that. So this is also good to have. So yeah, that wraps up what I wanted to talk about today. Thanks again for hitting 1,000 subscribers. It's a very humble YouTube channel. I'm just trying to learn myself and then try to pick other people's brains and try to just grow in my knowledge of 18th century, 19th century flintlocks and all that sort of information. So if you have any recommendations for books, please leave those in the comment section below. But that's all. Until next time, take care.